Some mornings I wake up before the birds. The house is dark and the futon is warm, and for a moment, just a moment, I forget how old I am. Then I try to sit up. My hands are the first to remind me. They do not open the way they used to. They close overnight like a flower that senses rain, and in the morning I have to persuade them, slowly, to come back. The knuckles, the base of the thumb. There is a tightness there that takes 10, sometimes 15 minutes to loosen. I used to think this was simply what getting old felt like. I used to think everyone woke up this way, stiff and slow, negotiating with their own body before the day had even started. I was wrong, and nobody told me I was wrong until I was past 70. My neighbor Fumiko, she lived 3 houses down from me for 40 years. She was the one who first made me question it. She had a way of moving in the morning that I envied without knowing why. By the time I would see her in the garden, she was already bending and reaching, pulling weeds with her fingers, no hesitation. I asked her once, very early, before I had even made tea. I said, "Fumiko, do your hands hurt in the morning?" She looked at me for a moment like the question confused her. "No," she said. "Should they?" I didn't know what to say. She died at 94. She was weeding her garden the week before she went. Her hands were open until the end. I thought about that for a long time. What was different between us? Same age, more or less, same island, same weather. But her mornings looked different from mine, and I started to wonder if the stiffness I had accepted as normal was not, in fact, normal. If perhaps it was a signal I had been ignoring for years. This is what I want to talk to you about today. That stiffness, the one that lives in your fingers and your knees and sometimes your hips when you first get out of bed. The one that fades, or maybe doesn't, by mid-morning. Most doctors, when you mention it, will nod and say, "Yes, that's common at your age." And they are right that it is common. But common is not the same as harmless. Common is not the same as something you should simply accept. What that stiffness is telling you, what I wish someone had told me decades ago, is that your body spent the night fighting, and it is tired. The word I learned later is inflammation. I did not know this word when I was young. My mother never used it. She used other words. She said the body was working hard, or she said the joints were holding tension, or she said, in the way old Okinawan women say things that are actually diagnoses, that the blood was not moving freely. She was not wrong, she just didn't have the clinical language. Neither did I, but now I know that when you wake up stiff, truly stiff, not just sleepy, but stiff in the joints, in the small bones of the hands, in the hips, it often means that inflammation has been active in your body through the night. The immune system has been working. The joints are swollen at a level so small you cannot see it, but you can feel it. That is what stiffness is, often. Not age, not weakness, inflammation that has not quieted. And here is what frightened me when I understood this. It does not have to be that way every morning. For many people it doesn't have to be that way at all. I lost a friend to rheumatoid arthritis. Her name was Setsuko. She was younger than me, only 68, when her hands became so stiff that she could not button her own shirt. She had ignored the morning stiffness for years. Her doctor had waved it away. By the time anyone looked carefully, the inflammation had been damaging her joints for a long time, quietly, while she went about her life thinking it was just age. Rheumatoid arthritis is not the only condition that announces itself through morning stiffness. Osteoarthritis, lupus, psoriatic arthritis, even thyroid problems. All of them can live in that morning tightness if you know how to read it. The rule I was eventually taught, by a doctor who actually listened, is simple. If the stiffness in your joints lasts more than 30 minutes after you wake up, do not ignore it. Stiffness that clears in 10-15 minutes, the body warming up, circulation returning. That is one thing. Stiffness that holds past 30 minutes, that keeps you from your normal morning tasks, that is your body asking for attention. Please give it that attention. This is one of the places where early listening matters more than almost anything else. Now, what I can tell you is what I have done. What changed in my mornings, not medicine, though medicine has its place, and I am not dismissing it, but the habits, the small things that came before breakfast. The first thing, and this feels almost too simple to say, is that I do not stay still, not even for a moment in the morning. The minute I am awake, before I have even left the futon, I begin moving my hands, opening and closing them. Slowly, no force. I make fists and release them. I rotate my wrists. I press my palms together like I am praying, and then I pull them apart, stretching the base of the thumb. This takes 3 minutes, maybe 4. It is nothing dramatic, but I learned from my own body and from what Fumiko showed me, without knowing she was showing me, that the joints need movement to move better. When you let them be still, they stay stiff. When you begin to ask them to work, gently, before the day demands anything, they respond. The second thing I do before I eat anything, before I make rice, before I sit down with the newspaper, I make turmeric tea. My mother put turmeric in almost everything she cooked. She called it ukon, the Okinawan name for it. We grew it in the garden. The roots are orange inside, almost violent in their color, and when you grate them, the smell is earthy and slightly bitter, like the soil itself. She did not know the mechanism. She only knew that the people in our village who ate it regularly seemed to carry themselves differently as they aged. Lighter, somehow, more fluid. I did not understand why until I was much older and someone explained to me what curcumin does. It is the compound that gives turmeric its color, and it acts on the body's inflammatory pathways. Specifically, it interferes with something called NF-κB, a molecule that drives the genes responsible for inflammation. I did not retain all of that, but what I did retain is this: it works. Not like a drug works, fast and forceful, like a habit works. Quietly, over months and years, it turns the volume down on the body's tendency to stay inflamed. I have known people who added it to their diet in their 60s and watched their morning stiffness ease, not disappear overnight, ease, the way a room gradually brightens as the sun comes up. The tea I make is not complicated. I use about half a teaspoon of turmeric powder or a small piece of fresh root when I have it, grated finely. I add hot water, not boiling, water that has just settled from a boil, then black pepper. This is important, and most people skip it. Turmeric without black pepper is like a door without a key. The piperine in the pepper increases how much curcumin your body can actually absorb. By a very large amount, they say more than 20 times. Then I add a small spoon of honey and sometimes a thin slice of fresh ginger. Ginger has its own quiet properties. It works on inflammation through different pathways than turmeric does, and together they do more than either one alone. I drink this before eating, on an empty stomach or close to it, and I have done this nearly every morning for 15 years. Now, I want to say something clearly because I am not a doctor and I do not want you to misunderstand me. The tea does not replace medicine. If your stiffness is severe, if your joints are swollen or hot to the touch, If the pain wakes you at night rather than only in the morning, please, please see a doctor. These are signs that deserve a proper answer. The tea is not the answer to those signs. Movement and turmeric are maintenance. They are what you do when you want to keep the fire low. They are not what you do when the fire is already out of control. But for the many people who wake up stiff and have been told that's just aging and have accepted it, I want you to know that some of that stiffness is talking to you. And there are things to listen with. There is one more thing I do, and it embarrasses me a little to admit it took me so long to start. After the tea, I go outside. Every morning, no matter the weather. I do not run. I do not exercise in the way young people mean when they say that word. I walk slowly around my small garden. I check what is growing. I pull whatever has gone dry. I bend down and stand up again several times because the ground requires it. I reach above my head for things, branches that need turning, laundry that needs taking in. All of this lasts perhaps 20 minutes, no more. In that 20 minutes, the synovial fluid in my joints, the liquid cushion that sits between the bones, begins to circulate. Joints do not have a direct blood supply the way muscles do. They receive their nourishment from this fluid, and this fluid moves only when the joint moves. If you sit still, the fluid sits still. If you move gently and consistently, it circulates, it nourishes, it keeps the tissue fed. This is why movement, not rest, is the answer to stiffness for most people, not hard movement, not painful movement, gentle, persistent, daily movement that asks the joint to do its job. Fumiko understood this, I think, without being able to explain it. She was always moving, small movements. She never sat for too long. At community meals, she would get up to help clear dishes, even when no one asked her to. She watered her plants by hand instead of using the long hose. She chose the small physical effort over the easy one every time, so naturally that it looked like personality. But I think now it was also wisdom. It was a body that knew it needed to keep moving, to keep moving. I think about Setsuko sometimes too. What might have been different if someone had noticed her morning stiffness earlier, if she had asked the question I asked Fumiko, if she had learned to pay attention to the signal before the damage was already done. I do not say this to frighten you. I say it because I think fear has its place when it makes us careful, when it makes us look. The morning is not just the start of the day. For those of us who have been here a long time, it is information. The body speaks its clearest truth in the first few minutes after we wake, before we have had coffee, before we have begun to perform the version of ourselves we show the world. The stiffness is part of that truth. It is worth listening to. I do not wake up without any stiffness now. I am 80 years old. Some things do not fully leave, but the stiffness I have is different from what it was 20 years ago before I started paying attention. It is shorter. It is quieter. My hands open within a few minutes now. I can get up from the floor without holding on to anything most days. These are things I used to take for granted, then lost for a while, and then, slowly, found something close to again. Small things, the tea, the hands opening and closing before I even get up. 20 minutes in the garden before breakfast. It is not nothing. Over years, it is not nothing at all. Check your hands in the morning. Before you look at your phone, before you think about what the day asks of you, just notice. How long does it take them to open fully? Are they soft after a few minutes, or are they still negotiating with you at mid-morning? That answer is worth knowing. Write it down if you have to. Notice if it changes. And if it does not change, if it stays, if it grows, tell your doctor. Not as a complaint, as information. because you deserve a doctor who takes it seriously, and your body deserves the same. I'm going to make more tea now. The ginger is almost gone, and I need to cut another piece from the root. Come back and sit with me again soon.